Hello and welcome dear students. As you know, the anatomy series is going on, which was made in demand of my students who found it pretty, reading anatomy a drag from the books, and they found it rather interesting if I take lectures or videos on them. And today's topic is going to be very interesting because today I'll be dealing with a very difficult to understand topic, the anatomy of which is very difficult to understand from the book. It took me a while to understand it myself until, of course, I took a 3D, video and understood the video properly, that I understood the spaces. Today we'll be talking about the deep perineal pouch, the superficial perineal pouch. Today we'll be talking about the perineal membrane, the Cole's fascia. What is perineum, what exactly is urogenital triangle, what is anal triangle, what is osteorectal fossa, so on and so forth, which is very difficult to imagine if you just read it from the book. So today I'll be giving you not just diagrams but also video, so that you're able to 3D identify what I'm trying to explain it to you. Otherwise, what's the fun? You've got all the books right there in front of you, the textbooks, the basic books, everything is available. But what will connect you most with my class will be the ease with which now you'll understand the same topic which you otherwise found difficult to understand. So that is one thing. The second thing is the notification which I always give at the beginning of my class. The much awaited DNB December 2022 answer bank is now being uploaded on my app. So everybody who is appearing for the DNB theory examination now in June should have a complete coverage of all the years which have just gone by, which definitely includes the latest paper, which is very, very important. So I would want you to approach me, just download my app, and automatically whosoever purchases the answer bank will get the access to the latest paper. Even if they do purchase it right now, it will be uploaded very soon in the same package. So don't worry. Even if the prices are being revised, the people who buy it right now, they'll not be affected. The ones who buy after this announcement, or of course the rise in price, will have to go accordingly. So anyways, these were a couple of announcements. I shall announce even more whenever I do remember in between the class. So let's begin with the class without wasting time. So today we'll be talking about, as you can see, the pelvic floor. And just to make it easy, I have this in front of me. We'll be dealing with this part. All right, this part, this is the pelvic floor. So this is how your pelvic bone it looks like. Just this is for a brief recap of the anatomy. So over here you have these pelvic bones. This is the ilium, the iliac crest. Okay, and this is of course your pubic bone over here, and then of course this is the ischium. Right, these are the ischial tuberosities, as you can see. Just a brief recap as to how to go beyond. So basically it's a muscular diaphragm. I think last lecture I did tell you, but it took me a while to even imagine that. I used to feel, levator and eye muscles go like this, levator and eye muscles go like this. This is what we've been taught, right? So what happens is actually it's not just going like this. It's like a bowl. I told you this last lecture. So it's just like this. And this part, which you can see in between my fingers, like over here, this is actually like that for the opening of the urethra, the vagina inside. So this is the urogenital hiatus, and the entire bowl is actually the levator and eye muscles, which is why they are so important. So the pelvic floor is actually a muscular diaphragm between the pelvic cavities. You know what pelvic cavity is because you're doing your hysterectomy or cesarean section all in the pelvic cavity. It's something which you can see abdominally, right? The laparoscopy and everything that you do, you're doing it in the pelvic cavity. What you do not see is actually the cavity below that, which is called as the perineal space. And today's discussion will be all about the perineal space because that's very difficult to comprehend. So I'll try to make it easy. So its upper concave surface is lined by pelvic fascia. Remember I spoke to you about, the condensed fascia, the arcus tendinous fascia. You will not be requiring that much. All right. Now I'll talk about the upper concave surface lined by pelvic fascia and is directed downward, backward and in the medial direction, while its lower convex surface is lined by the anal fascia. And now we'll be talking about the muscles of the pelvic floor. So there are two levator and eye muscles, with each further composed of three muscles. So you have the pubococcygeus. Do you understand now? This is the pubis, okay, and this is the coccyx, right? So muscle running from here to here, roughly. Okay, then you have the iliococcygeus, right? So what is iliococcygeus? Obviously a muscle which has got insertion over here, and it's running towards the coccyx. So this is the ilium. Okay, this is entire thing is ilium, right? So some muscle which is having its origins from here and is again coming to coccygeus muscle. And then you've got ischio-coccygeus, and this is the ischial spine, as you can see. So it's encompassing this area, something like this. Okay. So pubococcygeus, now termed as pubovisceral muscle, is subdivided to three parts. So it's pubovaginalis, because it's like a sling. Okay, it's like a sling. It's coming from the pubis bone and it's encompassing inside it, you know, the vagina, the urethra, and of course the rectal, the rectum. So here it's called as pubovaginalis, puboperinealis, puboanalis or puborectalis, muscle which inserts into the vagina, perineal body, and the anus. So it inserts in the, I'm not talking about urethra over here. Did I mention that? So you have vagina, the muscles which insert into the vagina, the perineal body, and the anus. Alright, I'll tell you what perineal body is, what is the composition, how does it come, everything. Then you have the iliococcygeus muscle. Alright, and then comes the ischio-coccygeus muscle. So roughly, you know, you should know the orientation. Nobody is going to ask you the origin and insertion. You'll get more clear with the diagram to come, and with the explanation of this. So basically, let's see. The levator and eye muscle has a lateral origin and a central insertion where they join the corresponding muscles from the outer side, from the other side. This is how it becomes. It comes from the lateral side and then it's got a central incision, and then it meets the muscles from the outer side. That's how the bowl is made. All right. Origin of the levator and eye muscle is from the posterior side of the pubis. Okay, this is the posterior pubis. Posterior side of the pubis, arcuate tendon of the pelvic fascia, which I spoke to you, the arcuate tendon, ATFP, ATFL. Pelvic aspect of the ischial spine, there goes the ischial spine, right? Then, and the insertion, extensive origin, inclined downwards, backwards, and medially. Now it's inserted into the lateral and posterior vaginal wall, which the central point of the perineum, the perineal body, the anal canal and anococcygeal body, lower part of the sacrum, and lateral border of the coccyx. All right. Then of course is the urogenital hiatus. I've spoken to you about before. Urogenital hiatus. Now remember. Then one is urogenital diaphragm, one is urogenital sinus, one is urogenital hiatus. We're talking about hiatus, which is a gap. All right. The urogenital hiatus is an anterior gap bounded anteriorly by the pubic bones, laterally by the pubococcygeus and puborectalis, through which the urethra and the vagina they pass. Remember, all these things will be embossed onto you by the video that I'm going to show you next. The rectal hiatus is a posterior gap. Then there is something which is called as rectal hiatus as well. Posterior gap with the rectum and anal canal through it. Okay. This is the diagram that I wanted to show you. If you can see over here, this is the puborectalis. It's running through and through. It's encompassing the vagina. So it's called as pubococcygeus, of course, which has got two divisions. Pubovaginalis when it slings around the vagina, and when it slings around the rectus, it goes like this. It's like a U shaped. So it basically inserts over here, but it's taking a U around like a sling. How is a sling? When you're riding a horse, you put a sling around the neck and you pull it. It's the same way. The hammock people say sling. There are a couple of people who call it the sling theory. So this is basically a sling. Okay, encompassing the rectus becomes puborectalis, and of course it's got, see, these two insertions over here, very rigid tendinous insertions on the coccyx. This is the coccygeus muscle, the ischio-coccygeus. All right, over here, of course, you've got the obturator internus. I'll tell you more about it when I talk to you about ischiorectal fossa. And then, of course, this piriformis muscle, again, we'll speak about it separately because this got, of course, the origin is over here, but the insertion is at the greater trochanter of the femur, helps in the adduction of the hip and all. So over here, what's more important is just the muscles of the perineum, the muscles which you cut when you're giving episiotomy, many of them, right? I'll talk to you about that as well separately. But right now, we'll just focus on the muscles of the perineum. You know that this levator and eye is called as the pelvic diaphragm. It is actually the diaphragm. Last lecture also I spoke about it. It's like the diaphragm above. It's like something like this. Very tough, muscular flap, or let's say muscle of the body, which separates actually the thoracic cavity from the pelvic cavity, right? Or the peritoneal cavity to be more specific. What this urogenital diaphragm does is to separate the pelvic cavity from the perineal cavity, or it's not exactly a cavity also, it's just the perineum, you would say. So this is actually lifting your and separating the pelvic cavity or the peritoneal cavity separately, and the perineum and the perineal muscles go down below. So levator again is divided to pubococcygeus and ileococcygeus, just coccygeus itself. What is the nerve supply? I spoke in the last lecture itself. You have the inferior rectal nerve and the perineal branch of pudendal nerve. So I told you pudendal nerve is very important when you're talking about perineal supply, perineum, right? And of course you have the inferior rectal nerve as well. As far as the arteries are concerned, you have internal pudendal artery and inferior gluteal artery as the supply. So almost this is not so important, and now just watch this carefully. I'll increase the volume so that, and I'll not disturb in between, so that you can go through this very beautiful lecture slow and easy. It's going to give you a 3D tour.
The perineum lies at the bottom of the pelvis. It is the space between the thighs, encompassing anus and genitals. It is a diamond-shaped space. The corners of the diamond are the coccyx, pubic symphysis, and two ischial tuberosities. The ceiling of the space is the pelvic floor muscles. The pelvic floor muscles, or levator ani, are shaped like a bowl. So the ceiling of the space is partly convex. The walls are the ischiopubic rami, the sacrotuberous ligament, which are the boundaries of the pelvic outlet. The diamond's anterior half is known as the urogenital triangle. The posterior half, the anal triangle. In a standing position, the urogenital triangle roughly conforms to the horizontal plane. The anal triangle is on an upward tilt, around 30 degrees from horizontal. To bring some perspective, here's the femur, a rough approximation of the coronal plane. Returning now to an inferior view. The urogenital triangle contains a fibrous sheet called the perineal membrane, oriented like so.
Just be very careful about this perineal membrane, because it's very important landmark, and we'll be discussing it further, the perineal membrane.
The perineal membrane has upturned anterior and posterior edges and collects within it a space known as the deep perineal pouch.
Very important.
The ischioanal fossae partially occupy the space between this pouch and the pelvic floor muscles.
This is very important.
The deep perineal pouch is thus a very shallow space.
Very shallow space. So deep perineal pouch.
All of this in blue, ischioanal fossae, and the space contained by and just deep to the perineal membrane, coloured in purple, that's the deep perineal pouch.
So if you see that there was a membrane called as the perineal membrane, the perineal membrane encompasses the deep perineal pouch. Underneath it, it's a very thin, very shallow perineal pouch, and on the side of it, I mean, it's very difficult to show you from here, but there is some membrane over here, and just inside it, enclosing it, is the deep perineal pouch, right? And since you have a lot of space here, can you see my hand is straight and there is a lot of triangular area left? That is the ischiorectal fossa. Now try to understand more.
It contains within it a number of muscles, including the external urethral sphincter. In the female sex, the pouch includes two holes for vagina and urethra.
So what does a deep perineal pouch contain? It contains the anal sphincter, number one, the opening for the urethra and for the vagina. That's what they're trying to show.
These are allowed passage through the levator ani muscles in this U-shaped space known as the urogenital hiatus. Just deep to the skin is a membranous layer of superficial fascia known as Colles fascia.
Now try to understand. There's one more fascia overlying the perineal membrane, which is right close to the skin, which is called as the Colles fascia. So that means you had one over here. See, I'm talking about the perineum, right? So you had a fascia somewhere over here, okay? And then there was a space inside it where my thumb is, which you can see over here. So this space was the deep perineal pouch, right? And now there is one more fascia which is coming on top of it, okay, on top of it, somewhere over here. Okay, now it's encompassing another pouch which is called as the superficial perineal pouch. You'll see now. Colles fascia.
And between the perineal membrane and the relevant part of Colles fascia lies the superficial perineal pouch. This pouch contains the bulbospongiosis, ischiocavernosus,
and superficial
transverse perineal muscles. It also contains various erectile tissue of the penis and clitoris, plus the continuation of the urethra and vagina. So that's the superficial and deep perineal pouches.
Very important.
The perineal membrane has a free posterior border. In the center of this posterior border and of the diamond-shaped perineum at large lies the perineal body. Fibromuscular meeting point for many structures of the perineum.
Many muscles inserted.
Many of the muscles we've mentioned so far converge here.
As you can see, bulbospongiosis is there, the superficial transverse perineum is there, the anal sphincter fibers are also there in the perineal body. So these are few muscles.
Posterior and superior to that is the anal sphincter muscles, the centerpiece of the anal triangle.
And like you have the urogenital triangle anteriorly, you have the anal triangle posteriorly, right?
Let's go back and review the most important points now.
This is a revision.
The perineum is a 3D space with the pelvic floor muscles as its ceiling.
Okay, I'm really sorry for interrupting it, but it's just a brief revision. I'll just put it if you just want it again.
The centerpiece of the anal triangle. Let's go back. Pelvic floor muscles as its ceiling. The space is divided into the urogenital triangle anteriorly and anal triangle posteriorly. There are two perineal pouches, superficial and deep, both in the urogenital triangle and separated by the perineal membrane.
Both in urogenital.
That's it for now.
Triangle.
Subscribe if you like this video.
That's very nice. It's a beautiful description of the perineum. I hope your concepts are now clear, guys. Let's move forward to understand a little bit more about the perineum and perineal pouches. I think now you can answer yourself. So you have the superficial perineal pouch, the deep perineal pouch, the contents of both of them. I don't need to repeat it. It's there written over here, and you can easily go back and read it. Again, muscles of the perineum. So you have this, just how do they look anatomically? So over here you have the bulbospongiosis muscle, the big muscle which you can see, the thick one. This is the ischiocavernosus muscle, and this is the superficial transverse perineal muscles. All are contents of superficial perineal pouch. Okay, going a little deep, so over here what you can see is probably the Colles fascia. What you can see right now over here is the perineal membrane. So you cut it and then you go across. You have perineal membrane encompasses in it the deep perineal pouch, and deep perineal pouch usually contains just the sphincter ani, see over here, sphincter urethra and the deep transverse perineal muscle. All right, so over here just above that, of course, you have the levator ani muscle which form a bowl, And I think let's not confuse any further. This is what it is actually. This is the perineal membrane, as you can see, and these are the deep transverse perineal muscles, which we should have spoken about earlier as well. This is all the perineal membrane is we're looking through the perineal membrane. Okay, so what we're seeing inside is actually the deep perineal pouch. Once the perineal membrane has been cut, what you see inside is a deep perineal pouch. So you have deep transverse perineal muscle, you have sphincter uretrovaginalis. Okay, that's how you can mention it. So you have sphincter urethrae, you have sphincter vaginalis. So well, you know about it. Now the pelvic floor is innervated by a branch from fourth sacral nerve, a branch from inferior rectal nerve, or the perineal division of the pudendal nerve. Okay, so that's the basic thing about it. The function is to provide the support to the pelvic organs, obviously. Pelvic diaphragm, I've spoken about it enough, I think, as far as holding for micturition is concerned, holding for defecation is concerned, parturition is concerned. When you're coughing, lifting heavy weights, sneezing, it helps the pressure, abdominal pressure, just the abdominal pressure in such a way that you do not inadvertently defecate or micturate. And it's of course the most important aspect of childbirth. It's important for the pubic support. It's important for taking care of this that prolapse doesn't happen suddenly. The visceral organs don't just start prolapsing down. Hernia and everything is controlled by that. Perineum, we've already spoken about, is that diamond-shaped space anteriorly bound by the pubic symphysis. I just told you, I was also demonstrating physically when there was this video going on digitally. So this is the pubic bone, this coccyx, and the two ischial tuberosities, which are actually the boundaries of the perineum, as you can see. Well, this is just another, boundaries and a little bit more about it. So I don't think we need to take it up. We know what urogenital triangle is. We just had a quick understanding of urogenital triangle, the superficial perineal pouch, the deep perineal pouch, and of course the anal triangle. Now, anal triangle was not so much highlighted, so I'll just speak a little about the anal triangle. So from the ischial tuberosities to the coccyx, if you join the sacrotuberous ligament, and again, of course, you join a midline imaginary line over here, you get the triangle, the anal triangle, the posterior triangle, and let's just put it like this. Something like that. Oh, okay, I'll just put it like this. Yeah. This is your anal triangle, right? Not this, this. Alright. So anteriorly, it's bound by transverse perineal muscles in the base of the urogenital diaphragm, right? Laterally by the ischial tuberosity, sacrotuberous ligament, and the posteriorly by the coccyx. The contents are the anal triangle, basically. Lower end of the anal canal, anococcygeal body, extrarectal fossa, even extrarectal fossa over here on the sides, like this. These two palms of mine, even that is a content, they say, of anal triangle. Measures around 4 to 4 centimeters. It's, how can you say a triangle doesn't measure 4 to 4. It has to be 3 sides. Its base is covered by perineal skin. Apex is pointed and continuous with rectovaginal septum. Muscle you get. Something is wrong over here, guys. It can't be bulbous spongiosum. Anyways, going ahead with next will be obstetrical perineum. See, importance is basically, again, I would say the pyramid shaped raphe between the anus and vagina where pelvic floor, perineal muscles and fascia fuse is called the obstetricial perineum, and the following muscles they meet to form its structure. So all these things are just all different facets of the same thing that we were talking about. Not so much asked in the exams. What was asked has already been elaborately spoken to you. So we just quickly run through this. Sphincter externus, two levatorinae muscles, superficial and deep perineal muscles, and bulboca. These are the actually the the muscles cut during your episiotomy, right? So, importance of anal triangle and obstetrical perineum. Anal triangle helps to support the levatorinae muscles which are placed on it, and the perineum supports the anal canal, posterior interior vaginal walls, uterus through the vagina, urethra, and it's liable to injury during childbirth. Deliberate cutting of structures during delivery is called episiotomy, and you should know the structures which are cut during episiotomy. That's all I'd like to mention. As far as the anal canal is concerned, that I'll be taking up in the other class. Thank you.